The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone street near Buckingham Palace. 8-year-old Emma walked beside her grandmother, clutching a small paper bag filled with breadcrumbs for the pigeons. Her bright yellow dress swayed with each excited step as she chattered about the royal guards they hoped to see. "Grandma, do you think the horses are really as big as they look in pictures?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Her grandmother smiled, adjusting her walking stick. "Even bigger, dear, and much more beautiful." They had traveled from their small village in Yorkshire specifically for this day. Emma had been fascinated by stories of the Queen's Guard and their magnificent horses ever since she could remember. Her grandmother had promised this trip for her 8th birthday. Today was finally the day. As they approached the palace gates, Emma's excitement grew. The red-uniformed guards stood perfectly still, their tall black hats creating impressive silhouettes against the morning sky. But what truly captured Emma's attention was the beautiful black horse standing nearby, its rider maintaining the traditional stoic pose. The horse was named Thunder, though Emma didn't know this yet. Thunder was a 7-year-old gelding who had served with the household cavalry for 3 years. He was known among the guards for his gentle nature and extraordinary awareness of his surroundings. Unlike some horses who might startle at unexpected movements, Thunder seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to sense danger. Emma tugged at her grandmother's sleeve. "Can we get closer?" "I want to see the horse better," her grandmother nodded, and they slowly approached the designated viewing area. Emma was mesmerized by Thunder's glossy coat and the way he occasionally flicked his ears, as if listening to conversations around him. She had never seen such a magnificent animal up close. Other tourists gathered around them, cameras clicking and children pointing excitedly. The atmosphere was cheerful and safe, the familiar buzz of sightseers enjoying one of London's most famous attractions. But across the street, someone else was watching Emma. A man in a worn gray jacket had been observing the crowd for several minutes. His eyes had settled on the little girl in the yellow dress, noting how she had wandered slightly ahead of her elderly grandmother. He checked his watch and glanced toward a black taxi parked nearby. Thunder's ears suddenly twitched in the man's direction, though the horse remained perfectly still. The guard atop Thunder noticed nothing unusual, but the horse's instincts were already awakening to something that wasn't quite right. About the scene unfolding before them, Emma had become completely absorbed in watching Thunder. She took small steps closer, fascinated by the way the horse's muscles moved beneath his sleek coat. Her grandmother was engaged in conversation with another tourist about the changing of the guard schedule, momentarily distracted from keeping a close eye on her granddaughter. The man in the gray jacket began moving through the crowd with calculated casualness. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with other tourists while maintaining a clear view of Emma. His movements were practiced, suggesting this wasn't his first time targeting someone in a crowded public space. Thunder's nostrils flared slightly as the man's scent reached him. Horses have an extraordinary sense of smell, and Thunder detected something that made his skin twitch with unease. The horse's training kept him motionless, but every instinct was now fully alert. Emma giggled as Thunder turned his head slightly in her direction. To her, it seemed like the horse was acknowledging her presence. She whispered softly, "Hello, beautiful horse. You're even more amazing than I imagined." The guard atop Thunder was focused on maintaining his ceremonial duties, scanning the crowd in the traditional manner, but not noticing anything specific. The royal guards were trained to remain vigilant while appearing statuesque, a balance that required intense concentration. Meanwhile, the man had positioned himself strategically. He waited for the right moment when Emma would be furthest from her grandmother's immediate reach. The black taxi remained running, its driver seemingly unaware of any plan, but positioned for a quick departure. Emma's grandmother finished her conversation and looked around for her granddaughter. A moment of panic crossed her face when she didn't immediately spot the yellow dress. Then she saw Emma, closer to the horse than before, began walking toward her with her careful, measured steps. But the man in gray was faster. He approached Emma from her left side, where her grandmother couldn't see him clearly due to other tourists blocking the view. His face wore a false smile as he prepared to speak to the little girl. Thunder's entire body tensed. The horse could sense the man's intentions in ways humans couldn't understand. It's a sense of anxiety, the subtle aggression in the man's posture, the way he moved with predatory focus. All of these triggered Thunder's protective instincts. The man leaned down toward Emma, his voice taking on an artificially friendly tone. "Hello there, little girl. Are you here all by yourself? Have something really special to show you in my taxi over there." Emma looked up at the stranger with confusion. She had been taught never to talk to people she didn't know, but the man's smile seemed friendly enough. Still, something felt wrong about his approach. His eyes didn't match his smile, and his grip on her small shoulder was firmer than it should have been. "I don't think I should go anywhere," Emma said quietly, trying to step back toward where she remembered her grandmother being, but the man's grip tightened slightly. "Oh, it will just take a minute. I have some puppies in the taxi that need help. You look like a girl who loves animals." Emma's heart began beating faster. The mention of puppies was tempting, but her grandmother's warnings echoed in her mind. She tried to look around for her grandmother, but the man was guiding her away from the crowd, was using his body to block her view. Thunder watched this exchange with growing agitation. The horse's ears were now pinned back slightly, and his breathing had changed. The guard on his back finally noticed his mount's unusual behavior and looked down, trying to understand what was causing Thunder's distress.
"Ow."
"I need to find my grandma first," Emma said more firmly, trying to pull away from the man's grasp. The man's friendly mask began to slip. His voice became more urgent, though he tried to keep it low. "She'll never know you're gone. We'll be back before she notices. Come on now." He began pulling Emma more forcefully toward the waiting taxi. Other tourists were too focused on taking photos and watching the guards to notice what was happening. Emma's grandmother was still searching through the crowd, panic rising in her chest as she couldn't locate her granddaughter. Thunder could no longer contain his instincts. The horse began shifting his weight, his hooves clicking against the pavement in an agitated rhythm. This was highly unusual behavior for a ceremonial guard horse, and it immediately caught his rider's attention. Emma tried to dig her heels into the ground, but she was no match for the adult man's strength. Tears began forming in her eyes as she realized the danger she was in. "Help," she called out, but her small voice was lost in the general noise of the tourist crowd. The man was now practically dragging her toward the taxi, abandoning any pretense of friendliness. "Shut up and move," he hissed under his breath, his true nature finally showing. That was the moment Thunder had been waiting for. The horse's protective instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution and strengthened by his bond with humans, could no longer be suppressed by his training. Thunder reared up slightly, enough to alert his rider to immediate danger, then broke from his ceremonial position. Thunder's sudden movement sent a shock through the entire scene. The magnificent horse, who had been standing perfectly still for hours, was now in full protective mode. His rider, Sergeant James Mitchell, instantly understood that something serious was happening and loosened his tight control. Trusting his horse's judgment, Thunder moved with purpose and power, his hooves striking the pavement as he positioned himself between Emma and the taxi. The man in gray looked up in shock as over 1,000 pounds of protective horse blocked his path. Thunder's dark eyes were focused directly on him, and the horse's entire posture radiated warning. The man tried to pull Emma around Thunder, but the horse sidestepped to block him again. Thunder's intelligence was remarkable. He understood exactly what was happening and was determined to prevent it. The horse's training as a military mount combined with his natural protective instincts created a formidable guardian. "What's going on here?" Sergeant Mitchell called out from atop Thunder, his voice carrying the authority of someone trained to handle dangerous situations. Other tourists began to notice the commotion. The sight of a Royal Guard horse breaking formation was so unusual that people started pointing and gathering around. The man realized his plan was falling apart as more attention focused on their group. Emma felt a surge of hope as she saw Thunder protecting her. She had been right to feel drawn to the beautiful horse. Somehow, he had sensed her danger and come to help. "This man is trying to make me go with him," she called out, her voice now strong enough to be heard clearly. Thunder snorted and took another step toward the man, who was now backing away. The horse's message was unmistakable: release the child or face the consequences. Horses in the wild protect their herd, and Thunder had clearly decided that Emma was under his protection. Sergeant Mitchell was already radiating for backup and dismounting from Thunder's back. His years of military training kicked in as he assessed the situation. The man's behavior, Emma's obvious distress, and Thunder's unprecedented reaction all pointed to a serious threat. "I need you to step away from the child immediately," Sergeant Mitchell commanded, his hand moving instinctively toward his radio. The man's eyes darted between Thunder, the approaching sergeant, and the growing crowd of onlookers. His carefully planned abduction was turning into a public spectacle, exactly the opposite of what he needed. The taxi driver, finally realizing something was wrong, began to drive away, leaving his partner stranded. Emma's grandmother finally spotted the commotion and began pushing through the crowd as fast as her elderly legs could carry her. Emma, where are you?" The man in gray realized he was trapped. Thunder continued to position himself protectively, and now several other tourists were actively watching, and some were even filming with their phones. The situation had spiraled completely out of his control. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," the man protested weakly, but his grip on Emma's shoulder betrayed his lies. "She asked me for help finding her grandmother." Emma found her courage with Thunder standing guard beside her. "That's not true. He was trying to make me go to his taxi, and he said he had puppies, but I didn't want to go, and he wouldn't let me go find my grandma." Her words came out in a rush, but every adult present understood the gravity of the situation. Sergeant Mitchell moved closer, his professional training evident in every step. Meanwhile, Thunder remained alert, his ears forward and his attention fixed on the potential threat. More members of the Royal Guard were now approaching. Having been alerted by radio, the man looked around desperately, realizing that his escape routes were rapidly disappearing. The crowd of tourists had grown, and several people were clearly photographing and recording everything. Grandma, I'm here," Emma called out when she spotted her grandmother. Pushing through the crowd, the elderly woman's face was filled with terror and relief as she saw her granddaughter. "Emma, oh thank God." She moved as quickly as she could toward her granddaughter, her walking stick tapping urgently against the pavement. Thunder gently moved aside to allow the grandmother to reach Emma, but kept his watchful eyes on the man who had threatened her. The horse seemed to understand that the immediate crisis was passing, but he remained ready to act again if needed. The man made one last desperate attempt to blend back into the crowd, but Sergeant Mitchell was too experienced to let a potential criminal escape. "Sir, you need to stay right where you are. We need to have a conversation about what just happened here." Additional police officers were now arriving on the scene, having been called by palace security. The man's shoulders slumped in defeat as he realized there was no escape. The carefully planned crime had been thwarted by an observant horse and a brave little girl. Emma ran into her grandmother's arms, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Grandma, the man tried to take me, but Thunder saved me." "The horse saved me." Her grandmother held her tightly, looking up at Thunder with gratitude that words couldn't express. "Thank you," she whispered to the magnificent animal, though she wasn't sure if horses could understand such things. In the days that followed, Emma's story spread far beyond the palace gates. The security camera footage clearly showed how Thunder had broken from his ceremonial duties to protect a child in danger, and the video became a sensation on social media. People around the world were amazed by the horse's intelligence and protective instincts. The man was arrested and charged with attempted kidnapping. During questioning, police discovered he had been watching the palace area for weeks, looking for opportunities to target unaccompanied children. Emma had not been his first intended victim, but thanks to Thunder, she would be his last. Sergeant Mitchell received commendation for his quick response and professional handling of the situation, but he was the first to admit that Thunder deserved most of the credit. "I've worked with many horses in my military career," he told reporters, "but I've never seen anything quite like Thunder's awareness and protective instincts that day." Thunder became something of a celebrity himself. The household cavalry received thousands of letters and emails praising the remarkable horse. Many included carrots and apples, which Thunder enjoyed immensely during his well-deserved breaks from duty. Emma and her grandmother returned to Yorkshire, but not before visiting Thunder one more time. Palace officials made special arrangements for Emma to meet Thunder properly, away from his ceremonial duties. She was allowed to pet his neck and feed him carrots while telling him how grateful she was for his protection. "I'll never forget you, Thunder," Emma whispered into the horse's ear. Thunder nuzzled her gently in response, as if he understood every word. The incident changed how Emma saw the world. She learned valuable lessons about stranger danger, but more importantly, she discovered that protection and kindness could come from unexpected sources. She began volunteering at a local animal rescue when she turned 10. Inspired by Thunder's heroic actions, years later, when Emma became a veterinarian, she would often tell the story of Thunder to young clients who were afraid of large animals. She would explain how horses, like many animals, have an incredible ability to sense danger and protect those who cannot protect themselves. Thunder continued his service with the household cavalry for several more years before retiring to a peaceful farm in the countryside. Even in retirement, he remained alert and protective, watching over the other animals on the farm with the same dedication he had shown that day at Buckingham Palace. The bond between humans and animals, Emma learned, goes far deeper than most people realize. Sometimes, when we need help the most, it comes from the most unexpected heroes. And sometimes, those heroes have 4 legs, a gentle heart, and the courage to act when it matters most.